listening to a Frozen Truth production.
Hi, how you doing? This is Justin Payne, and this is Morris Nelms. Welcome to Tuesdays with Morris, and we are going to start our conversation off with kind of jumping into one of our favorite artists, whereas sometimes it is the feel, it is the look, it is the experience. The feel, the look, and the experience is pretty much the conversation that we will have today about life, about music, and about arts. And we're going to actually jump right into the middle of the conversation. Why? Because we can't stop talking when we get around each other's presence. So what happens when the feel, the look, and life is lived together? Let's check it out together. That's why I enjoy Prince. He's made an art form of how he adjusts the microphone. Between him and James Brown, like at least as a frontman, maybe not exactly as a piano player, but
Prince did play piano though.
He did. Well, I mean, let me just back it up. His artistic approach to literally everything he did, then made it not look like a nuisance, but actually made like a literally a part of the presentation.
Well, Miles Davis had a summation on Prince. It was one of the best things I ever heard about him. He said that, okay, he mugs like Chaplin. What else did he say? He grooves like James Brown. Solos like Jimi Hendrix. And he had one other thing in there as well. How's he going to miss with that?
There's this, I think that's the beautiful part. It's like when you get to it, where even your microphone adjustment is, beautiful.
Are you already recording us?
I'm always recording. If your microphone adjustment is beautiful, then it's part of just the experience of thank you. Because, I mean, even as a performer, you've seen some people that make unnecessarily... I'll just say it like this. It wasn't awkward until you made it awkward. Like, anything can happen on stage. Anything can happen in a gig. Anything can be necessary to address physically, whatever in the room. But when you, like, sort of pull in the audience's attention to that you are not comfortable with it, then suddenly they are not comfortable in it. So that's why I like even Prince. He can even, for me, Prince's greatest moment, which, how do you pick one? I picked one. The greatest moment in the sense of non-planned factors, but the greatest of almost finger of God moments is him playing the Super Bowl, singing Purple Rain in the rain.
I remember, backstory. When I was learning to play jazz, I was interested in jazz, and I wasn't interested in anything else, so I kind of just missed everything. So I missed Prince when he was hot, when he was brand new, because I wasn't interested, because I was trying to figure out how to do what Bud Powell and Thelonious Monk were doing. And I'm sorry to say I had a little bit of a closed-minded attitude. Maybe you need a certain amount of that when you're trying to learn something,
It might have blinders on.
But I probably took it too far. But in any case, I remember watching the Super Bowl, and he came on and handed in what I, to this day, would say is the best Super Bowl performance I have ever seen. Mm-hmm. Like you said, Purple Rain in the Rain was magnificent. I remember thinking, okay, whatever I may have thought about this guy before, my opinions have all been recalibrated by what I've just watched, And I've seen plenty of stinky Super Bowl halftime shows. I mean, just where you're like, okay, I guess, especially some of the singing. I mean, I guess maybe it's hard to hear. I don't know.
Oh, that's where it definitely transitioned technology-wise of their abilities to broadcast in-ear monitors, but also they just halfway just started milli-vanilling everything. Doing a pre-recorded experience of some sort.
Well, okay, I grew up on the Rolling Stones, and there's a certain thing about that band I like. They have a certain kind of groove that's their own.
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of funky, it's kind of sloppy. You know, it's them, right? And nobody quite has that. I mean, somebody once told me they're the luckiest garage band that ever lived. Well, yeah, in a way that's true. But Charlie Watts he's got something that a lot of drummers don't have, and that is an understanding that, hey, pulse is what really matters here. You know? And then Jagger understands how to sing so that he and Charlie Watts are locked up like a trumpet player and a big band drummer, right? Lead trumpet and big band drums.
Yes, and they lock it with such, at the same time, predictable looseness.
Exactly.
Where, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but this is what popped in my mind. Is sometimes you look at Mick Jagger in his performance, and then of almost being like that, I don't know, it's the holidays and you know your drunk uncle is coming, but he never gets entirely that drunk, but just enough that it's going to be a show. But then his aunt, the aunt steps in and knows at the right time to carry him away. That sometimes sums up to me Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones, because you know it's going to be loosey-goosey. You know it's going to have elements of, oh, but at the same time, they're going to reel it back in to be consistent on the next time and not go completely too far.
Yeah,
I hope I haven't triggered anybody. But
no, it's. I remember reading an interview about one of them, and somebody said that Jagger was the most professional. So, and he's very much the one that I think kind of does that. What I remember about their Super Bowl show, they had great groove. The guitars were so out of tune it was almost unlistenable.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I was just like, man, I mean, I know that kind of raunchy, out of tune sound is part of the sound of your band, but you could have kind of dialed it back a hair. At the same time, I think Exile on Main Street's a fantastic record. You know, they basically sat down. They did the same thing that Stevie Wonder's done for some of his best work. They just sat down and jammed and jammed and jammed and jammed until they had two vinyl discs worth of stuff. You know,
greatest jam record released, in my opinion, Louie Louie, where no one to this day can truly say what are the lyrics to Louie Louie.
There's a great Far Side cartoon where it shows two elephants standing in front of a grand piano, and one of them says, well, you play this part, you know, here, then you move up here, and then you move up here, and that's how you play Louie Louie.
Yep.
Clang, 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 clang,
I am convinced after
gotta go now.
After doing songwriting sessions and learning and being amongst musicians and how some people creatively try to approach things, and this also feeds into the recording myth or legend of always keep the tape rolling, is that I am convinced that was simply a mess around, get us like loosed up in the recording session, just hit record, whatever, if you're a good engineer. And he's just and it's like, wait a minute, you recorded that? That was awesome.
There are so many stories like that. Wichita Lineman by Glenn Campbell. Jimmy Webb wrote it. It wasn't a finished song when he sent it to Glenn Campbell. And he talked to Glenn Campbell later and said, you know, I sent you that Wichita Lineman. I didn't think it was, you know, finished yet. And Glenn said, we cut it. Right? Song was on Rolling Stone's list of the best 100 recordings, right? Pop music recordings. It is. It's magnificent. It really is. It's a remarkable song. Both the text and the way the music's all put together. It's what pop music can be.
That's the whole point, in my opinion. Is that, like, don't get me wrong, we live in essentially the digital age of everything can be quantized and quanticized, of how much, how little, the spectrum of strategic placement in song approaches digitally versus the quarrel of truly making music organically. That's what people seem to crave when it comes to live performance. Let's just say live performance, because I have an artist that I like. I was just thinking about a gospel artist. Her name's Kiera Sheard. And
what's the name?
Kiera Sheard. She's a granddaughter of Mattie Mars Clark and also a daughter of the Clark sisters.
They're tough. The Clark sisters.
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness.
Absolutely. And so then she has kind of a two-way flip side perspective on her albums. She literally, on one long play album, she'll have about 4 or 5 different cuts that are a live performance. But then she'll have 4 or 5 different cuts that are completely studio centric and really not the same feel. And sometimes it took me a while of wondering what and why, but I just recognize, for me and my perspective, I love the live experience. However, there's the opposite, where they love the studio experience. They need the studio cut. They need the quiet, quantized experience.
Well, one of the things Miles Davis said about digital technologies, he said musicians can learn a lot faster. If you need to know what the bass part is to a song, modern recording makes it a lot easier to figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
Except in those cases where they've overdriven the bottom end of it to the point where it can even obscure the tone.
Oh, that's true. That's true.
That I've run into that some. But you were talking about live stuff. Just recently, I was introduced to Donnie McClurkin's version of "Great Is Your Faithfulness Towards Me." Great is your mercy towards me.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful cut, and it's live in London. And I watched another live version of it. It's different than the first one. Spectacular.
And it only almost works because it's live.
Well, yeah, it's a really simple song.
Mm-hmm.
Dee da 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 ba da 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 ba da dee da 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 ba da dee da da da. That's the whole melody.
And it just circle fifths all your way around.
Exactly. Yeah, it's the same, almost the same chord progression as "Autumn Leaves" or the theme from MASH.
Yes.
Right.
Which is why when I get to Texas State and I'm learning "Autumn Leaves," I'm like, this is just Donnie McClurkin.
That's too funny. Because "Autumn Leaves" is quite a bit older than that. But yeah, so I'm sure Donnie McClurkin heard "Autumn Leaves."
Exactly. Well, I mean, just coming from the fact that I'm a
or it was
gospel
just
player.
something, or it's just something he heard without realizing how similar it was to "Autumn Leaves." But he'd heard other people who'd heard "Autumn Leaves," whatever, So the stuff is in the air, at various points in time. When Jelly Roll Morton was asked about jazz music in 1940 or so, whenever he was interviewed by, I think it was Alan Lomax interviewed him, he said, I think jazz is fine music because I lifted things from other kinds of fine music. I listened to opera, and I used things that I heard in opera, and New Orleans was an extremely musical city. Mm-hmm. So there was music all over the place, and you hear snatches of Guy Lombardo, which was a sweet band, playing for society gigs, cocktail hour, that kind of stuff. You hear snatches of that in Louis Armstrong. He loved that music. So
I think that's the beautiful part about, even especially you speak of New Orleans, is recognizing the historical location of New Orleans and its gateway. Essentially, they called St. Louis the gateway to the West, but honestly, New Orleans was the gateway of culture to the West.
Because not just to the west, to the north too.
The north, exactly. Because
straight up to Mississippi.
Straight up, all the way to Chicago, all the way down. You're catching all these major ports, essentially. But then the major influences of cultures that are connected and going up, sending the music up and sending the music down on the riverboats, because these same musicians would also have riverboat gigs that would expose and be exposed to traveling musicians and traveling passengers with preferences and cultural background. One of the greatest things about even living in Texas is like the great German migrations that happened to here, even in central Texas areas. But the Gulf of Mexico was ran by essentially 2 major ports, the Port of New Orleans and the Port of Galveston. And those people coming in almost like Ellis Island with their cultures, with their experiences, and exploding these throughout the land. New Orleans specifically regarding the music expression, because of its more closely connected cities along the Mississippi, that then there was that overlap of so much more influence.
Well, part of it too, the way that New Orleans is set up, it's limited by water.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like Manhattan, it's just if you're going to build up, not out.
It was literally bigger than New York at one point, or on the second or third largest city after New York and Philadelphia was New Orleans, in the earlier parts of the Union, essentially. Once it became, before it got, the whole Civil War situation. Once it was in the earlier parts after Louisiana Purchase, New Orleans was popping.
Well, sure, yeah, I can believe that. Oh, there's something else I wanted to say. You were talking about Louis and how things can happen in the studio that are just jams that become remarkable. Clark Terry recorded an album with the Oscar Peterson Trio called Oscar Peterson Trio Plus One, featuring Clark Terry.
Right.
It was a landmark album for the Oscar Peterson Trio and a landmark album for Clark Terry. It put Clark Terry's name on the map in a very big way for two songs, one called Mumbles and the other one called Incoherent Blues.
Mm-hmm.
Incoherent Blues was the first one they recorded.
Incoherency.
And, they were just goofing off in the studio, and Clark told them to play a blues, and they played a slow blues, and he started going, and after he got a little ways into it, Ed Thigpen, Ray Brown, and Oscar were all doubled over laughing. And they said, no, you've got to cut this. He was just goofing off. He wasn't thinking at all about recording it. So he recorded that one, and then he did a fast one, Sing on, hang on, bong, ding, ding, hang on, bong, gong, ding. It's called Mumbles. Both those tunes took off, Mumbles especially.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up having to sing Mumbles at every concert he did for the rest of his life. And there was one point he was telling me, he says, how is it? He says, I've done all kinds of stuff. Clark Terry was on so many recordings that the Penguin Guide to Recorded Jazz said that he is featured on more albums listed in this collection than any other single artist.
Wow.
So there's no end to what he's done. He did a recreation of the Porgy and Bess recording Miles Davis did. They got all the Gil Evans orchestrations, and they redid it with Clark on trumpet and flugelhorn.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic record. And he was in his 80s when they did that, and he was still just soared. But he was telling me, he was just about to go on, he said, I've done all this stuff. And that one thing I did off the cuff, just for grins, is the thing that everybody remembers.
You're still even seeing that from the cultural influencers of today. They're doing all these kinds of TikToks and all kinds of social media ventures, trying to put out a specific brand of content. And the one thing that makes them popular, famous, or viral is the one thing they thought would never even make it past the editing floor, or something like that, something that just was a joke or a goof or a gaffe, but that's what everybody was drawn to.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's like, whatever, do that. Just
keep doing that. Whatever it is you did that time, keep doing it. Well, that's another thing about media, is that, once you get a hit property, the people who want to make money off of it will run it into the ground.
Right.
I mean, they did what? How many? 7 Rocky movies now, I think?
I've lost count. If you're counting Creed, yeah. If you're
counting the more modern
8.
retake.
Rocky 5 plus Creeds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like, and they're about to do a third Sonic the Hedgehog, I'm sure it'll be fun. Jim Carrey is a good actor, and he enjoys playing that character, and the main character's cute and all that. So, it's like, more power to him. The only thing that bugs me about it is, just the other day, I'm looking at my smart TV, and it's got Pluto TV on it, it's got live TV on it, and it's got all the streaming stuff, and it's like, I'm looking, it's just like, my God, it's like, look at all this stuff. It's like there's all this stuff to look at. And yet, I can't find anything that's Shakespeare 24/7. Why is that such a problem?
I mean, good PBS used to have it.
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't get it. If you can put on all this other stuff, surely, and also, then why isn't there a 24/7 jazz channel? I mean, there's enough jazz musicians running around to keep a 24/7 jazz channel on. I mean, you could just have. I mean, you do have live feeds now from places like Smalls and Mesros and places like that.
Or Lincoln.
Right.
But I'll even challenge. Hey, Chris, Parker Jazz Club, just go ahead and just run it consistently on your channel. You've got some great recordings, even at Parker Jazz Club here in Austin, Texas. Just keep running it on the live, you know?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem that confronts, I think, people as far as music is concerned is that I didn't realize this until just lately. If you're streaming live, it's a different set of copyright issues than if you're playing a recording. Or if you're using music in your hymnal in worship at church. If, in other words, as long as it's inside the walls of the church, you know, it's very unlikely anybody's going to say anything. But once you stream it, then you kind of have to have CCLI numbers for everything you do.
Right. And this is essentially part of the, that's even part of the, half of the reason of why even Facebook is taking down live streams. Because now, after essentially COVID and such that happened, where the nation and the world migrated to the mediums of broadcasting through Facebook or YouTube media and or other social live platforms, it's always how do we catch the monetization of copyright and playback and such like that. And so not only was there a major storage issue, quite literally, it's just running out of space, and keeping up that is ridiculous, but also it is the volume of how many broadcasts would then be essentially culpable to paying the artists and paying into BMI, ASCAP, CCLI numbers and such like that, because that's why even Facebook just gives you a little FYI. Sounded good enough where we caught it, and you're sharing a lot of ad revenue with the owner. So they're able to link it, and the AI technology is really stepping into and stepping up with that, with detecting it. But it kind of taking themselves out of the fight of finding it because so many people are broadcasting that way. So sorry, Chris, I just talked you out of a job.
Yeah.
But
did you and Chris Kamara go to school at the same time?
we did not exactly. He was like doing his master's or something.
Right. I remember, I would bet maybe his graduate recital.
Yes, by his graduate recital, we were overlapped. And I remember his graduate recitals when I just sat there and like, I didn't know such flutes existed, of bass flutes and giant. He brought out the whole woodshed worth of woodwind ability instruments.
And he also sang a version of Imagination. Imagination is silly. But he sang it with some lyrics that he wrote, My Graduation.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. And that was a good one.
I really love that. But yeah, he's used that as his calling card ever since. And that is that, you know, if you go see Chris, you're going to see somebody play a number of instruments that you won't hear probably anybody else in Austin play.
Right.
You know, and that alone is fascinating. Yeah. Plus, he plays them quite well.
There was a live recording that was done here in Austin at Stubbs Barbecue by, I think it was around 2005, at sort of this height of South by Southwest music becoming what it was going to be for about 10, 15 years. And it was done by an artist by the name of Matisse Yahoo, who essentially was a rapper that rapped over reggae island beats, live band with Hasidic Jew overtone.
Ha! I think I've heard about this guy. He dressed like an Orthodox Jew.
Yes.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about now. I didn't recognize the name, but yeah. And I've heard a little bit of his music, yeah.
And and I've heard other albums of his. I can't get past 20 seconds. I go straight back to the Live at Stubbs album. And even if it's the same song, I need the Live at Stubbs album. There's just something about the tempo, the temperament, the audience feedback that they have in the microphones. I mean, I do a lot of live recordings, and my specialty is essentially the audience mic. It is not so much of, well, let me get all these drums and all this perfect tone. It's like, but what do the people hear? When the people come to see, when the people come to experience, what do they do, and what is their feedback that makes you feel like you are there? Well-placed audience mics can really envelop you back into that moment that mattered.
I think we may have talked about it. There's a company called Chesky that used one microphone in a room to record everything. They specialized in acoustic classical music, but they also did some jazz recordings. And they would basically go to the club well in advance and spend a whole, afternoon with the band, checking spots in the room and then put it in exactly the right spot. And there are some famous old recordings of classical music that were done that way. I believe there's a Toscanini recording of Beethoven's Ninth that was recorded in a concert hall with one microphone strategically placed. And it's, the band mixes itself, so to speak, right? The orchestra mixes itself, the band mixes itself. If you've got a situation like that where the musicians are all empathetic and listening, it's like.
Well, this is why I also try to help people understand in the performance aspect that, let me just say it like this, for audio engineers that I mentor, I try to help them understand you need to sit where they sit. You need to sit amongst the people and hear what they hear. Not everybody's going to be perched up in a nice little cozy spot or whatever and getting your ideal direct sound. You need to, with the technology of the day, you have an iPad or whatever technology, and you can literally just sit at the table. And I always say the band should not know who the audio guy is, because they should blend in listening and enjoying and creating that space and feeling that is ideal for the audience to perceive after such and such of the band has been satisfied through sound check and their initial signals, so that they can then ebb and flow together. So I always tell people, come from behind the desk, go sit down, and if you don't enjoy it, they won't enjoy it. That's the other part. Make something that is enjoyable for the experience.
That's like that's like something I've told students. I said, anything you're practicing, can you make it dance?
Yes.
If you can't make it dance, how do you expect other people to like it?
Right.
Maybe it's not supposed to dance. Maybe it's slow and reflective. That's something else.
Okay. Well,
but if it's in rhythm, it should feel like dancing.
Okay. Yeah. So going with those lessons that you taught, you would ask the question, does it feel like dance? It's like, well, what's the point of jazz music, right? So you can dance. But I would go a step further and be like, it's not so you can dance, so you can get someone to dance with.
That too.
We would have these kind of understanding conversations of, if you cannot set a mood for someone else to be successful in life according to your setting, then what's the point? It's almost like it's not about what did I play and how technically accurate this, that, and the third. People don't come for that. They come for the atmosphere. They come for the talent within the atmosphere, and they come to experience something as a result of the talent and the atmosphere all put together.
Yeah, I've heard it said that, audiences don't come to be taught or to be told, they come to feel.
Yes.
And you can play just about anything and create a feeling that some audience will appreciate. There's an audience for just about every music out there. There's some really avant-garde stuff that I'm amazed anybody wants to listen to that does have a small but devoted following.
But then the switch is, let's go back to our one-cheek professor, is let's take Chopin and go to a classic realm. You take the same music, but then you draw the people in with your performance of, I am not doing a recital, I'm not doing what I've always done, and it's actually, how do I bring the audience into the music to experience the feeling of a nocturne, of the feeling of this particular concerto, the feeling, does it really feel like a Purcell's? Well, do you feel like this is the coronation that it's designed for? Like, do you feel royal? Do you feel extravagant? Do you feel reflective? Are any of those words part of their experience? If not, you just played a rehearsal of notes that has no kind of experience of feeling in it.
Yeah, it's funny. There's lately I've been looking at Arthur Rubinstein on YouTube because I found short video, and it's called Rubenstein at 90. It's an interview with, I think, CBS television. And there were a number of gyms in it, and then there was another place, and this is one of the things he said in that interview. He says, I hear many pianists today who play much better than I do. Now, Rubenstein was tough for him to say that. He's talking about some really wicked technicians. He said they play perfectly. What I don't hear is I don't hear music.
Yep. There you go.
Yeah. And he was basically saying, I think the reason that I have been successful is because I don't play the piano, I play music, right? Mm-hmm. And he said it more eloquently than that, but that was the gist of it. There was another spot in it that I just loved, where the guy asked him, so, well, many people think you're the finest pianist of the 20th century. How do you feel about that kind of thing? Do you believe him? And he says, no, I don't believe it at all. I think it's absolute nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went on to say that if I were to ask you, you can see this on YouTube. It's called Rubenstein at 90. Anyway, he said, if I were to ask you who's the greatest visual artist, would you say Leonardo? Would you say Michelangelo? Would you say Raphael? Would you say Titian? Would you say Rembrandt? He says, it's impossible to say which one of these is the absolute best ever, right? Mm-hmm. And he said, then he related this story that I thought was just so beautiful. He said, I went to an exhibit in Amsterdam of Rembrandt's paintings. He said they had over 300 paintings by Rembrandt. So he looked at all these paintings by Rembrandt. And he said, this man created a world. Mm. And when I finished looking at all these paintings, I thought there can't be anything else.
Right.
And he said, and then a little bit later, they had an exhibit of Vermeer's paintings. And he said the same thing. I had the same exact feeling. Then later he saw an exhibit of Titian's paintings, had the same exact feeling. People have asked me, well, who's the greatest jazz pianist? It's like, when I listen to Monk, I'm not thinking about Count Basie.
Right.
I'm not thinking about Oscar Peterson. I'm thinking about what Monk is trying to tell me. When I listen to Oscar Peterson, I don't think about Count Basie, and I don't think about Monk. When I listen to Count Basie, I don't think about the other two either, or any other number of pianists. They create...
Exactly.
They create a place where their statement exists
on its own.
It's kind of the same thing you were talking about with Prince.
Yes.
When I hear Prince, sure, I can hear James Brown. But he creates this space where his music exists. Now, not all musicians do that.
I almost get offended when people ask me who my favorite this person is. I'm like, because if you ask me a favorite, you're asking me to compare in specific feelings. If I'm able to, like you said, fully appreciate an expression of one artist, I don't need to compare it to the expression of a different artist, because the world that I'm in that space is totally different from the connectivity that I experience with another artist in another space. Well, so I can't rank it.
It's kind of like people let their enthusiasm for particular musicians trick them, I suppose, into saying things that really don't stand up at all. I mean, I remember right after Michael Jackson died, Beyonce said, "This is the greatest musician in history." Well, give me a break.
I mean, he's nice.
Yeah, it's nice music, but I mean, the greatest musician in history. Come on, Beyonce. Did your editors not? You obviously, she's gushing, right? Yes, yeah. It's like, come on, you can't back that up with anything. I did get tickled at one of my Intro to Fine Arts class students because we were talking about canon. This is one of the things I taught. It was like, okay, we establish a canon, and it is a way of saying who are the greatest, right? But it's more about a yardstick against which we measure ourselves. Mm-hmm. If I'm going to play jazz piano, then I have to sit down and commune with Oscar Peterson and Count Basie and Bud Powell and Hampton Hawes and Jelly Roll Morton and Fats Waller and McCoy Tyner. I have to commune with these people because they were there before I was. If I'm going to give a speech in the English language, I get to commune with both William Shakespeare and Martin Luther King because they both did it about as well as anybody can do it.
Right. And so you spend time invested into what was printed. I'll just say it like that, more or less what's printed, what's accessible. But then you are able to craft an appreciation for each individual oration and style and what went into becoming them. But you no longer have to use the measuring stick against them. That's the thing. The measuring stick, I like how you said it, is against you. It's to build you up. It's to bring up your tiers, to bring up your skill.
Right.
So then you can, as we said, you can write the book so that way you can throw away the book when it's time.
Right.
But it's to me senseless to assume the greatness of one compared to the greatness of another. It is only to the greatness of yourself whether or not you can comprehend. Like the book that I like to read, where is the Lord would even say, can you comprehend what I am doing? And if you cannot understand it, you don't understand what new things I am doing. Sort of paraphrase, I'm doing new things. But if you can't comprehend it, therefore there's pieces of me that you cannot receive and or understand. And so God's doing what he's doing, but meanwhile, we're still on our particular human level of thinking and perception and comprehension. And so therefore, we're not able to do anything but compare ourselves to what we've known, but not understand where we are going. I said all of that to even, there's a story that I love that I grew up hearing about at a church. There was a college student. He went off and lived a little bit of life, went to a university, came back to his hometown, and was starting to, everybody's glad, yeah, you went to the university, congratulations. And part of his testimony at the university was that he wanted to sing a song, Amazing Grace. And so he sat up on that stage and sang Amazing Grace and sang it wonderfully. He studied, he's educated, sang Amazing Grace and sat down. And everybody was like, that was very nice. Congratulations to the college student. But then there was an old lady. May not have had all the teeth, may not have had the education, may not have had the degree. She says, well, I have a song. And so she gets up and she sings Amazing Grace. But by the end of her singing Amazing Grace, there is not a dry eye. The people are engulfed in the experience, and the college student leans over and asks, she just sang the same song I sang. But the understanding is really, yeah, you sang the song, but she knows the creator of the song. And so the experience is different.
Yeah.
You sang the lyrics, but she sang the song. That's another perspective.
Another way of looking at it, yeah.
Looking at it. You sang the lyrics, but she sang the song. She had a song to sing.
Yeah.
You had words to recite. Yeah, go ahead.
Did you ever see the movie White Men Can't Jump?
Yeah.
Do you remember the conversation they had about listening to music versus hearing it?
Yes.
I thought that was fascinating. That was one of the best things in the whole movie.
But you don't hear me.
Yeah. I listen to it. That doesn't mean you're hearing it.
Doesn't mean you're hearing it. I listen to it. Like, it's often that same perspective of, it's not so much what was, I mean, what stuck out in my head visually, I literally have a cadenza in my head. In my head.
I was about to ask you what that word was.
Yeah, cadenza. Cadenza would be the furniture. But a cadenza in my head of, essentially, this is a space that is immeasurable in rest and time. You can almost take as much time to express and or not express in this moment. That's up to the artist of the music that's positioned in the sheet music for you to finally remind yourself what this is supposed to do. And you take that even into oration. You take that into moments of pause and moments of take yourself out of time. Stop sticking to a rhythm. Stop sticking to what is written on the page, but make sure you make a moment of, it could be embellishment, it could be a moment of silence, it could be a moment of wait, because that creates tension. And it creates an experience that is not easily duplicated, which is why you then have the beautiful parts of who is expressing the music most authentically.
Yeah, and if there is a badge of greatness or any of that kind of thing, I mean, to me, it does come back down to the favorites. I mean, somebody says, who's the greatest this or the greatest that? And it's like, I can't really tell you that. I can tell you who my personal favorites are. And the favoritism derives from what I was able to glean by listening to them, what I was able to do by studying them. There are some people who can do vocal impersonations and make you convinced. I mean, I remember one time I got to play for a guy who did vocal impersonations in Vegas, and I swear, he's sitting there doing Seven Spanish Angels, I think was a song that Willie Nelson and Ray Charles recorded together, and he's doing both parts.
Oh,
and making
Ray
me think
and
I think they're both there. I mean, I was just stunned, right? But even so, the best ones that can also really sing, they have their own voice, and their own voice is still present somehow. When Sammy Davis Jr. does Nat King Cole, you can still hear Sammy Davis Jr. in there, right? So what is your particular sound? The voice is nice that way because everybody has a sound, right, because of physiology. Piano, it's harder, but you get a sound by how you touch the instrument. And, wind instruments, it's kind of like the voice. You're going to have a sound based on your own physiology, how you direct the air, how you control the air, all of that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of ways to establish a sound, but that to be, the first thing we hear when we hear a musician is what they sound like. How does it sound? And the next thing we hear is what's their time like? How do they move from one pulse to the next? What do they do in that space? And then the next thing we hear is whatever the ideas are, whatever the content is, whatever they have to say. So the sound has to be the first thing that grabs people. If your sound is weird, you may have a harder time of it, right? I mean, whatever pluses or minus certain kind of voices have, there are certain people who are going to hear a voice like Louis Armstrong, even as wonderful as he is to listen to, there are some people who would hear that voice and just say that's an ugly sound and not listen to it. Right? Because it's not an orthodox sound.
Right.
Right. And that's what I mean. There's some people, and then there are other people who are going to listen to certain pop singers and say, yeah, it's a lovely sound, but it's still not the kind of sound I want to hear because they have their mindset on operatic sound. Right. Etc.
And that's why, I mean, like, you can focus on the understanding of, whatever. Communication is like 70% of how you sound, 20% of how you look, and really 10% of what you actually say. I mean, there's this.
That's interesting, but how do you react to there's a quote from the movie about Bobby Darin where one of the characters tells Bobby Darin, says, well, people hear what they see.
People hear what they see. That means they still believe you sound good by you looking like you believe it. So, for example, the American National Anthem. If you just really put it all in there, doesn't even matter what you actually say. Because I'm just going to be honest. If I really observe 60,000 people at a stadium truly singing about the ramparts, and I've seen people mess up the lyrics all the time. But because you're at the National Stadium, you're going to have your hand over your heart. And if, as Eddie Izzard would say, if you just keep confirming and denying stuff, you look great.
And we have a flag.
And you have a flag. and it's just like, you don't know what they're saying. But as long as you're confirming and denying stuff.
I just got a call from the local football team. They want you to sing it there next to me.
Exactly, because you're convincing it, you're selling it, you are showing people that you care. No one really knows what exactly you're saying. In fact, half the time, I would like to contend, here's my hot topic of the day, that the American National Anthem is the most misunderstood American patriotic document of note other than the Declaration of Independence. Because...
Okay, now why do you think that? Okay, go ahead. There's a couple of questions I wanted to ask.
Because if you ask let's just kind of like going through the vocabulary and the vernacular of the Star Spangled Banner. Of what does this mean and what did the writer understand while he wrote it? Then the average American citizen is like, yeah, I can say it, but I don't know what it means. Versus my counter argument is that if you go with America the Beautiful,
everybody knows what it means.
You can paint the picture. It is beautifully painted. It makes sense. I'm like, I'm in my own personal campaign. Let's make America the Beautiful, the national anthem.
You and Ray Charles.
I love it. Oh man, it's got to be Ray Charles' version too. But
well, I mean, and it's funny because I felt like he was really making some headway with that idea, and then Whitney Houston came along.
And then blew the Star Spangled back to number one.
Yeah, that was a magnificent version she did of it. I was just like, when she did that, I was just like, I wanted
like,
America the Beautiful. It's a better song.
But then Whitney Houston just comes in and does that, and that's the only national anthem I play. People say like, if I'm DJing, can you play the national anthem? All right, Whitney Houston.
I'm sure there are other versions of it that are lovely. Stravinsky did a version of it that got him into trouble. I think in the 40s or 50s, he did an arrangement. Igor Stravinsky, right?
Yeah.
So you can imagine what it was. And I can't remember if he was arrested or at least strongly censured by, I believe, the United States military.
Oh, wow.
They really didn't like
did he make some minor
This is
chords
well before Jimi Hendrix played the national anthem at Woodstock.
Oh, goodness.
And there's a magnificent version
That's
of it.
another one. That's 1A. You know?
But, I mean... if you got the right singer and they just sing it, that can be powerful too. What I don't like about the song, and I'm not the only musician to say this, I'm sure you probably do, it is not a song that is made for the average person to sing. The range is ridiculous.
Neither is Happy Birthday.
Well, yeah, that's true. There are so many bad versions of Happy Birthday out there. There are jokes galore in the musical community about, here's the version of Happy Birthday I heard the other night, and it'll have all these crunchy chords in there because all these people are singing it.
Have you heard, oh my goodness, I forget if it was Bernstein or not, but he reharmonizes Happy Birthday to say this is a much more approachable and universal melodic way to sing it. Even keeping the same chord structure, but the melody itself is wrong because that whole octave jump, you don't want to do that. Or even saying with Star Spangled Banner, like that's way not
given where you started.
That is a reach for a lot of people, and it's not. That's why some people appreciate and tolerate much more even Canada's national anthem because it has a much more approachable range for the average singer.
The average person, okay, Billie Holiday wasn't a trained singer, and she had a range of about an octave and a third. You write more than an octave and a third, then you're writing for a professional singer, for a trained singer.
Right.
So you should, if you really want to write a song that everybody can sing, it should be within an octave.
And or your jump should not be an octave. Your jumps should be more
octave
than a
jumps
third
are
or a fifth.
ridiculous.
Exactly.
And you grew up on Looney Tunes, right?
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember that song going, everybody sing the Michigan? I remember the first time I heard that, I was going, wow, what is that? And I realized, found out how hard it is to sing those octave jumps the way that guy was singing them.
Right.
Octave jumps are ridiculously difficult. So there's other, so if you're going to write a song that you want people to sing, you need to remember what songs people have been singing forever. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star and Mary Had a Little Lamb. There's no severe jumps. Da, dee, da, 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 dee, da, da. Easy to hear, easy to sing. Da, 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 dee, da, 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 ba, beat. We're already an octave and a third.
Yeah.
Dee, da, da, dee, na, we're out of key. Ba.
Yeah, that half, that
and now we've heard it so much, yes. Yeah, but then that dee 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 dee. Now we're already out of most people's normal range. I'm falsettoing it, right? And then if you got to do that high note at the very end, you better be a professional singer.
And you're double octave up on that.
Yeah.
And so it's where going back to even like the feel of it though is where some people appreciate of the grit that it takes to get up to that.
I saw a version of a trumpet player who really couldn't play very well at all playing the national anthem, and he splattered the notes all over the place, and people loved it because he was giving it his all, and he obviously wasn't a professional musician.
It's the American dream.
Right.
We give it our all. I mean, but I've been
Now I just thought about that. You remember that saxophone player that did the videos of him playing Careless Whisper all over the place?
all over the place.
He's going everywhere and playing Careless Whisper. Maybe that should be our new national anthem. Dee-ba-da.
Oh, goodness gracious.
No, I'll keep with the one we got rather than go there.
But it was just really as a point to say half the time, we're not, it's the feel. It's the feel of something. It is the presentation of it.
Yeah.
That then we may not even know what you are halfway saying, but as long as it looks good and feels good, we'll take it.
Carl Reiner tells a story I saw in an interview where he was acting Shakespeare. Carl Reiner, of course, is the comedic visionary who came up with the Dick Van Dyke Show. Mm-hmm. And he and Mel Brooks recorded an absolutely hilarious spot called The 2,000-Year-Old Man, where basically Carl Reiner asks him questions and interviews him, and then Mel Brooks answers, playing well before he was an old Jewish guy, playing an old Jewish guy answering these questions. It's hilarious. Oh, my goodness. Comments on all kinds of stuff. But in any case, Carl Reiner was doing a Shakespeare play, and he forgot his lines. And so he just started blathering in a Shakespearean style, right? Just babbling in a Shakespearean style. And he demonstrated it. And it was like, if you didn't know.
You didn't know.
You wouldn't know. And he said basically he just kept doing it until finally the other actor realized, okay, I see what he's doing, and then came in, and then everything went on from there. But nobody realized, except those who were really, really paying attention, nobody realized that he just, made a bunch of stuff up.
And that is, what was it? There was the experiment that was done, I think from India, that said, like, let me just throw a bunch of American-sounding words together and make an American pop song, and people from my world won't know any better. And they'll just like, oh, we got an American pop song. That's great. And it went platinum over there. Like,
well, do you remember when Opa Gangnam Style?
Yep.
Nobody understood what that was about, but people loved it over here.
Yep, it was the dance.
It led to a sensation of a whole movement of people interested in Korean pop music in this country.
Right.
So yeah, you don't have to understand the words. And Fats Domino and Mick Jagger both contributed to that as well. Fats Domino said in an interview, you should never sing the words that clearly. And Mick Jagger said, great. And him with his, sometimes thick Cockney accent. He's interesting because 1 minute he'll talk like sounds like a Cockney, and then the next minute he's got a perfectly clear English voice.
Yeah.
He studied at the London School of Economics. I know he knows how to talk, right?
Well, going back to my other comment, depends on how much other Jagger he's had.
Oh my God! It's like, remind me of something somebody told me once. This is like most of us who survived the 70s. I don't remember a lot of it.
but
not talking about myself. Talking about somebody else.
It's good. Disclaimer. You were unsupervised.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, referring to something. In my defense, I was unsupervised.
But also, like, it is the perspective of whatever you're doing, as long as it feels good, is how people perceive it. I can't explain it, but that felt good. Like, I can't give it the that's the whole beautiful part of the cultural je ne sais quoi. It's French to say, I don't know what.
Okay.
I don't have the words to describe what just happened.
We've talked about comedy a lot, and one of the things that is interesting about comedy is how many people are connected wherever they are right now, wherever they started with. You can go all the way back to the beginning of the silent film era and the comedic stuff that was going on there. And I just saw a short where Buster Keaton, they're showing Buster Keaton doing his stunts. Buster Keaton did most of his own stunts. According to Dick Van Dyke, who met him later when he was 68, he said Buster Keaton told him that he had broken every bone in his body at least once. Which Jackie Chan has had similar.
Yes.
And what makes Jackie Chan movies fun to watch? Jackie Chan.
Yeah.
The movie can be total silliness.
You don't even know what the plot is. You just know he's going to go all out with whatever he's doing.
Yeah. And it's fun. It's fun to watch him do what he does. Same thing for Buster Keaton. Charlie Chaplin once said, all I need to create a comedy is a park bench, a pretty girl, me, and a policeman. Yeah, so you laughed right away because you already see what he's going to do. Right. And it's all going to involve a whole lot of physical movement. Well, okay, then why did I bring that up? Just recently, my girlfriend turned me on to a sitcom called Perfect Strangers that I'd never heard of because it was on at a time period when I was focusing a lot more on my music and not watching a lot of television. I was stunned at these two actors.
Are we talking about Bowski? Like
Balky and Larry.
Okay.
The physical comedy those guys have together. And then I found out later, they were interviewed and asked about what they were doing. They said they loved I Love Lucy. Well, that's physical comedy that goes all the way back to the silent era because Lucille Ball was crazy about Harpo Marx. She had Harpo Marx on the show, and they did a silent mime routine from one of the movies. So, it all goes back to those silent film stars. Sophia Loren was very influenced by Charlie Chaplin. Mm-hmm. It's like it's Marlon Brando was looking forward to working with him. He was disappointed, but he still wanted to work with him. So that all of that stuff is. There is something intrinsically funny if it's timed correctly about somebody getting a pie in their face, and that hasn't changed.
It still hasn't changed. And I think that's the beautiful part about even just wrapping into timing. The timing of an action creates the relief of whatever tension. Mm-hmm. If I'm making almost like a sort of, you know me, I'm a math guy, so I like to make equations of even when it relates to comedy, is that the timing of action is equal to the amount of tension created. So then you're creating a formula of almost kinetic energy perspective of something that's building. That's why even going with Charlie Chaplin, you see a policeman, and then that's contrary to physical and or stature of a pretty woman. Mm-hmm. And so there's authority, there's masculinity, masculine energy, then there's femininity, there's beauty, there's delicacy, and Charlie Chaplin's in the middle. So you know that there's going to be a play between this tension. Like you said, why did I laugh? It's because now you have juxtaposing forces that need to be meddled with somehow, some way. And the relief of the tension of what's going to happen is going to be the automatic relief of even laughter and release of even laughter. And so that is all, in my kind of general summation, is that it's based off of perceived tension and look and feel before you even say anything or words are exchanged. I'm even going back, I'm kind of still marveled at the fact that you can fake the right. Well, I guess the modern phrase would be fake it till you make it. Nobody knows you're lying until you give it away.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're improvising, if you're just doing it on the spot. I found this out just recently looking at YouTube. YouTube's fascinating. So much stuff on there. I don't know if you've seen Apocalypse Now.
Actually, not really.
Okay, it's a flawed but magnificent movie. Martin Sheen. It's based on Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad. Martin Sheen plays a character who's sent upriver to get Colonel Kurtz, played by Marlon Brando. Colonel Kurtz is basically a high-ranking, high-prestige military officer who has gone completely off the rails and is in Cambodia someplace and has a bunch of people around him and just is behaving like, an ancient primal god or something, right? And the army wants him taken out because they figure he's not going to come in. So we want you. Anyway, there's an incredible scene in it where Sheen is having his audience with Colonel Kurtz. Captain Willard is Martin Sheen, and Colonel Kurtz is Marlon Brando. And everything's dark and shady and everything, and Brando's head pops in and out of the shadows and stuff. It's brilliantly photographed. And at one point, Marlon Brando asks him, why does the Army want you to kill me? And he said, I believe, sir, they said your methods have become unsound. And Brando doesn't react. You can just see his fist clenches like this, right? Like he's basically reacting to, it's all he does. He's reacting to the suits in the office who have no field experience.
Right.
He's been in the middle of this muck for all this time, and he's gone nuts. There's no doubt that he's crazy. And then he says, and do you think my methods are unsound? And then one of my favorite moments in cinema, Captain Willard, Martin Sheen looks at him, gives him that hollow 1,000-yard stare. This is like, complete lack of comprehension, and says, "I fail to see any method at all, sir." And it's fantastic. The whole thing was improvised.
Oh.
Because Brando, at that point in his career, didn't learn lines. He wanted to be spontaneous. He wanted to be in the moment.
I
he wanted
need to
just
be the...
Yeah, exactly. Method gone run amok. And what Coppola told Martin Sheen was, look, don't worry about what we've written. React to whatever he does.
Coppola did that? Yeah. Oh, man.
And it's one of the rawest... It's one of the rawest, most beautiful scenes I've ever seen two actors play off. And after the scene, apparently, Brando came over to Martin Sheen and said, "You did good, kid." And Martin Sheen said it was the best compliment anybody had ever given him, right? Yeah. Because the shoot was ridiculously difficult for everybody. Martin Sheen had a heart attack.
Oh, wow.
While they were filming it.
Wow.
This
is the thing. That's a great segue of some of the greatest moments in cinema are captured improvised moments, because they recognize the artist finally taken, and the directors give them the freedom to recognize the art is in the cadenza, the art is in the pause, the art is in, as my pastor would say, the 3 dots. Like we'll even structure sermons and say, okay, you write your sermon point out, but then these 3 dots is if this takes you, and the Holy Spirit essentially takes you after this, let them go. Let the roller coaster of understanding and the flood happen of this was desired for inspired thought, and then let the reservoir flood. And so, like, I'll just say it's like another cultural reference. Now we go from Apocalypse Now. Let me jump all the way to Wakanda, to Black Panther. That one of my favorite little pieces in Black Panther with suddenly I'm forgetting the names, but Chadwick Boseman is Black Panther.
He's so magnificent.
And then and who plays Killmonger? Suddenly I forget his name. Michael B. Jordan. Michael B. Jordan improvised a moment where he's revealing himself. The character is revealing himself as family to the royal family of Wakanda. And they're like, that's not possible. He's like, well, I am the son of the murdered uncle, and so I'm blood. And so then he says, hey, auntie. And I cannot tell you how those 2 words reverberated and echoed throughout a lot of Black Americans of you're almost having Shakespearean-like revelation and tension, and then this release of "Hey, auntie," like over the shoulder of the protagonist. Oh, by the way, and that was improvised, and they kept that in the movie. And it was, and that's one of my like new favorite or quick little. Okay, that's just knowing. That's just knowing.
I want to see his new movie, Sinners.
That's out there now. Yep.
I've heard. I've heard that there's a lot. It's a horror film about vampires, but I've heard that there's a lot more to it than that from a lot of people.
It might. It also can go. Let's just say in symbolism that we see in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou."
Exactly, because it's set about that same time period, 1930s, as I understand.
And I love how my dad had to just really help me deconstruct what was happening and what the symbolism was, even in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou," of like, let's just say even the crossroads, particular Greek myths and models of previous story lines and references that were made in "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou." I'm hearing that there are symbolisms that are happening in the movie Sinners in a very similar way.
Yeah, well, and The Matrix is another one that's rich in all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I mean, if you those 2 movies, "Oh Brother, Where Art Thou" and The Matrix, both. There's so much going on underneath that, to me, all the stuff on the surface pales in comparison to contemplating, especially in The Matrix, what's going on. Mm-hmm. You know, and they did so many clever things there in both of those movies. But yeah.
But do you have another improvised moment in cinema that just sort of sticks out with you?
Oh yeah.
What's another one?
In The Godfather, Michael Corleone Don Vito Corleone are having a conversation. This is Al Pacino, Marlon Brando, and they're sitting at this table and they're talking about stuff. And they're both totally into character. And at a certain point, a butler, valet, whatever, is supposed to come in with a tray with some glasses on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
He missed his cue, or he jumped the gun on his cue, and he came in early. And Coppola and the other people who were running cameras and stuff were like, oh, they're afraid the scene's going to get blown. Brando saw him and just motioned him over. Stayed in character as Vito Corleone, motioned him over and took a glass of wine from him and looked at him, and Al Pacino didn't take anything. And he said, "Lady, I don't know. I drink a lot more wine." And it was just, and they left it in.
I was like, yeah, I remember that part. That's
that was all made up. Most of what Robin Williams did in Good Morning Vietnam was improvised, and most of what he did as the genie in Aladdin was improvised, because they would basically just say, "Here's what's happening, go," and
Yes.
he would just go. And he said the only thing that ever happened in Aladdin was they would say, "Okay, Robin, it's getting a little bit blue for Disney."
All right, I'll pull it back. But there is a scene where in Good Morning Vietnam, he's interacting with a bunch of, I think it was the students.
Yes, we've talked about this, but yeah, go on.
That's right, and then, so that was a great tidbit. We talked about it in episode 3 or 4, so you'll have to go back and watch that again.
Ha!
But
it was basically the gist of it was the director noticed that when he was interacting with the Vietnamese students off camera, it was much better and much more what he wanted than it was when they were on camera. So I think they filmed the students off camera.
Which brings me to one of my favorite movies. It's a movie, not a film.
What's the difference? Before you say that, okay, I'm going to be philosophical here. Define our terms. What's the difference in a movie and a film?
I am sticking with the exact movie of saying you're making it too cerebral. You're not trying to get people to think, they're just trying to feel. So we're trying to create a movie here, not a film. Eddie Murphy in Bowfinger.
I haven't seen that. Okay, I'm going to have to see that. Bowfinger?
Bowfinger. Steve Martin, Eddie Murphy.
Oh, God.
And Eddie Murphy does do some additional character acting, which is also brilliant. And premise, I don't know if it's a spoiler or not, but premise is they cannot afford a big-time movie actor. Bobby Bowfinger's trying to save his little movie studio, so they cannot afford the actor. So all they do is set up hidden cameras, and it's an action movie. So just scare the actor into running that way and keep the cameras rolling.
Oh my God! This is almost like art imitates life.
Absolutely.
There's one of the movies that's supposed to be the worst movie ever made, Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yep.
Bela Lugosi was supposed to be the star in it, and Bela Lugosi died while they were filming it. So Ed Wood, rather than starting over or whatever, he just had somebody else put on a Bela Lugosi cape and walk around like this, and he's the wrong height. And then for the rest of it, he basically found some home movies of Bela Lugosi just wandering around his little house and smelling flowers and stuff, and just put in a voiceover.
Exactly.
It's horrible, but it's just like he's trying to make something happen.
Something out of nothing, and that's very similar to Bowfinger, where basically Eddie Murphy's character just has to. It's not improvised. He's actually experiencing life while everybody else is just kind of playing around and playing off of his responses.
Oh my God.
They even wrote the script to expect his, who are you talking to? Like, do you know who I am? Yes, I do know who you are.
There's a film that was made here in Austin. Parts of it were even shot in San Marcos. It's called Boyhood. And what the guy did is he made it over a 10-year period, and he used his children and some other people who were involved in he used his children, and what you see them go from pre-adolescence to college age, because they filmed this over a 10-year period. So you see a scene, you think, okay. Then you see the next scene, you say, how did they age them like that? And you realize, no, they didn't age them. They're really older.
Wow.
And then you see the actors are also getting older, of course.
Right.
And it's unlike any other movie I've ever seen.
Boyhood. Check that out. But there's
really
something about but the improvisation that we see in movies, and I can go on and on about how certain scenes are just outstanding because of the recognition that this is what it calls for. This is what the moment really sort of exudes, that makes it much more palpable to the people. As like, okay, that felt real because it was. Like sometimes people get kissed that didn't expect to be kissed. Sometimes people keep kissing when the director said cut and nobody heard. I've heard of that. There's one where I think it was let's just say even in Netflix Bridgerton, where the director said cut, they didn't hear, and then they just kept filming, and they're like, we're going to use this side of the take and not the first side of the take because that's a little bit more believable.
When Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton were making Cleopatra, that the gossip went out real quickly that they're not acting. And not long after that, they divorced their spouses and married each other.
And so, yeah, and that's sometimes the movie magic that we actually need is the ones that are not written. And so I'm going to use this moment to pivot and just be like, all right, I like what we do sometimes in celebrations. Do you have a celebration that comes off your head that you want to celebrate today?
Well, I very much enjoyed Good Friday service, and I very much enjoyed the Easter service, and so I would definitely celebrate Pastor Jeannie and Pastor Matt at Buda United Methodist Church. Something else. My brother and I had a conversation just recently, and I would like to celebrate Mark because he's done very well in New York and continues to do well there. He really likes it. And other things I want to celebrate. I want to thank the people at my insurance company because I went to see them about making a claim on that hit and run accident. Mm-hmm. And I took it to the shop today to get an estimate on what it was going to cost, and it was much less than I was afraid it might be. And, I'm just out the deductible, but I'm very pleased with the way that's going to work and what they're going to do. So that had a resolution that is better than it might have had if I had, for instance, given into road rage and tried to chase that guy down and get his number or get his tag number and confronted him about stuff. So, I'm pleased with the way that worked out. I think I would those are things I would celebrate.
I want to celebrate my buddy from back home. I'm approaching 40. We're not there yet, but we're approaching. But that's enough to live a little bit of life. My guy Steven, who I've known since maybe 3rd or 4th grade. But I'm going to publicly celebrate his journey of recovery and sobriety. And I know that he tunes in every now and then. He watches some of the content, but I want to celebrate him because there's other people that are, and then you've even mentioned, even on the broadcast, that you've gone to Al-Anon meetings, and it's not even about the addiction. It's about the tools to live life with more conviction and goals and perspective and focus in mind. And so I want to celebrate my buddy Steven for how he is clinging to the right sources in even in his faith or his family or even his new he's a firefighter now and his new career. And so I want to celebrate how his life has turned around and how he has looked to more positive resources and outlets, including this one, to help life move in the right direction for him and his family. So I want to celebrate that. Just your journey has been awesome to behold.
Any of the people I've met who have accomplished sobriety through AA, there's something remarkable about them because it's to be borne in mind that out of every 3 people that walk in the doors of AA, only 1 is going to accomplish sobriety. That's how bad demon rum is, right? That doesn't mean everybody who takes a drink is an alcoholic or anything of the sort. That's not what I'm saying at all. Some people can drink and it doesn't affect them, but some people, once they take a drink, they're condemned, right? Unless they have something turn around. Now, there's a guy in my Emmaus group, Bob, who's going to be 91 this year, and I believe he stopped drinking when he was 45.
Hi, Bob.
And so he's, had so many years of sobriety now.
And it's
And
still
the
a
interesting
fight.
thing is that his wife will still take a drink, but he's not tempted to drink with her.
Okay.
His wife was never had that problem. She'll have a drink now and then, but he's not interested in touching it.
But we celebrate you. We celebrate you because life is worth living when you find things to celebrate. And so we want to do that. And we want to thank you all for joining us here on another Tuesday with Tuesdays with Morris. This is Morris Nelms. I'm Justyn Payne. And we hope to see you again real soon.
You're listening to a Frozen Truth production.